Hey guys, this is Lala Legacy and welcome back to another episode of Symphonic Rain. So before we jump in, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button because that would mean the whole world to me, and afterwards, if you like this video, hit that like button too. Now, I think we might be finishing up this, or Lise's good ending here, so let's look forward to that. Alright, Lise almost seemed like a normal girl talking about her dreams. Pleasant, positive dreams, void of worry for the future. I didn't want to deny her that future. In fact, I wanted to share that dream. It encouraged me greatly that Lise had so much faith in me. Yeah, that would be nice. As long as Lise was there for me, and as long as I was there for Lise, we would be fine. I was sure she felt that way as well. But I have one favor to ask. What is it? If it's something I can help with, shoot. It's about that song I've been singing. What about it? I want you to help me search for the score of that piece. The score, huh? Search for it where? Didn't you say the reference room at school didn't have it? The score is located in my house. Your house? The thing is, I'm actually an orphan. Lise wasn't aware I had already learned of that from Grave. His words had been excessively cold. Back then, Lise was hurt and deathly afraid, so I had been unable to find an opening to discuss the matter. I see. So I pretended not to know and waited for her to continue. You don't seem very surprised. Well, it's a common occurrence in aristocratic families. That was the truth. And not for pure reasons like them being unable to bear children themselves. Stories of aristocrats who would seek out children with potential and allow them into their families to keep their names high were all too common. The girl here, right in front of my eyes, was living proof that these stories were true. Apparently, when I was admitted to the orphanage, that score was all I was carrying. At the time, I couldn't read yet. Apparently, I also used to sing along when the teacher there played the piece for me on the piano. But my father did not allow me to sing. After all, he took me in for my talents for playing the fortel. He had no use for a girl with different interests. That's not true. Or so I would have liked to say, but I couldn't. After all, what she said was completely true. Lise didn't seem to notice me trying to think of something to say and continued. So, father took that score from me and hid it somewhere. Somewhere in the mansion, I presume? Actually, I have a good idea where it is. It has to be somewhere in the study. I once caught father looking over the score in the study. At the time, I thought I might have been trespassing and quickly ran away, but there was no mistake that was my score. And I've heard it, too. I've heard father play it on the fortel once. But why would he have interest in that score? Perhaps he found it to be a very good piece, just like you did when you played it for the first time. I see. I considered whether that could truly be the case. It didn't seem in accordance with Graves' character, but he did have a discerning eye for music. In any case, it has to be in that study. I had it hidden out in the hallway and saw him come out of it empty-handed. But how do we get inside? There are guards and such, right? Father doesn't trust people much, so besides chefs and cleaners, there's no one in the house. And when those people finish their work, they always go home immediately. So effectively, as long as he is away, it would be easy for us to get in? I believe so. Then we should go when he isn't home. I think he's out today. Today? Every year from December onwards, he holds special lectures at school and doesn't come home until late at night. Now that you mention it, I could recall Miss Cordell once telling me that Grave would be there even though he had no students to teach. But then, in actuality, he was using his time to give private lessons to Lise. So, I thought today was our last chance for this. That score is really important to me. Without that score, I might never have come to realize how much I love to sing. Got it. Then let's leave at around noon. Okay. In the end, this might have been a positive turn of events. There were still a lot of things to think over, but Lise's feelings were genuine. It was a little past noon now. Shall we go then? Yeah. Lise had already finished preparing and was waiting for me at the door. I quickly followed suit and turned around one last time before stepping over the threshold. We're off. We're off. Okay, be careful. Shh. Forney had suddenly appeared, floating above the shoebox where she normally left dry towels for me. Is something wrong? This won't take long. You won't have to speak. It's nothing. But would you mind waiting for a sec? I don't mind. I heard what you were talking about. I nodded weakly, urging Forney to continue. There isn't much for me to say to you anymore, but good luck. Why did she have to tell me that at a time like this? If only Lise wasn't here, I could have asked her. I'm going to disappear for a while again, so this is goodbye. Hey, wait, is what I came very close to yelling out. Lise's a good girl. I think I can safely leave you in her care. I don't want to hold you up any longer, so I'll leave you with with one last piece of advice. Stick together, you two. Bye-bye! Wait! I accidentally shouted that out loud, but I somehow knew that Forney would no longer return. But I am waiting, Lise answered, standing outside the door. Right. Sorry. Is something the matter? You look a little pale. No, I'm okay. Just checking if we didn't forget anything. Putting a smile back on my lips, I turned back toward Lise. Forney probably had her reasons for saying those things to me. She might really never appear anymore. Even though I would be leaving soon anyway, I had at least wanted to have a good talk with her first. But I couldn't brood over this forever. Come on, let's go. Okay. I intended to fulfill Forney's final request. We're off, I announced once more, then stepped outside. The rain was especially weak today. It was so calm there was little need for an umbrella. It almost felt warm to the touch. Combing back my slightly dampened hair, I had another good look at the mansion. It was huge, yet felt barren. That feeling had grown stronger now that I'd heard from Lise it actually was. I have a key, so let's go. Okay. Uh-oh, Grave is gonna be there, isn't he? It was dim inside, and I couldn't feel the presence of people. The ornaments and interior were extravagant, as one would expect, but they didn't leave much of an impression on me. I felt everything to be in bad taste, especially now that I'd learned about Grave's true character. Here it is! Lise stepped before a room in the back of the house on the second floor and slowly opened the door. Uh-oh, Grave's gonna be in there, isn't he? As expected from his study, the room was filled with books and documents of various musical topics. This room alone was many times more spacious than my entire apartment. It lost in size and quantity to the reference room at school, but it didn't appear to be inferior in terms of quality. It should be somewhere in this room. It's kinda big, though. Sorry. I merely spoke my mind, but Lise took it rather seriously and apologized. That wasn't my intention, so I hastily corrected my statement. Oh, but it seems the scores are stored in a fairly limited area, so it's no big deal. I'm sorry. Like I said, I didn't finish that line as I realized that it was probably Lise's return to this mansion that was causing her to act so tense. This house probably didn't hold very good memories for her. And to her, this room might symbolize Grave himself. Never mind. Anyway, don't worry about it. I will start searching here. You take the other side. For now, she would probably be able to take her mind off things if she had something to occupy herself with. I took the glass door shelves to the left of the entrance. I had Lise search similar shelves on the other side of the room. We didn't know the exact time Grave would return, but we probably had until about 30 minutes after the official end of the lecture. so I calculated that we had around 3 hours. Okay. I had no idea where to start, but it was probably a good idea to focus my search on envelopes and cases as the most likely places to find a score. Since it was handwritten, we could ignore all the publicized works. First of all, to make sure we could make a quick escape, I didn't do things like spreading everything out on the floor. Everything I took in my hands I subsequently placed back in its original position. After over an hour of searching, I was starting to get tired. I stopped for a moment and said to Lise, "We still have plenty of time, so let's rest for a bit." "Huh? Okay." Lise seemed to have been searching with utmost concentration, so it took her a while to reply. I had searched around half of my part of the room, so we should be able to find it within the remaining time. But what would we do if we didn't? I figured it would be dangerous to come sneaking in here a second time. Now that Lise was no longer living in this house, it would be difficult to determine at what times Grave would be out. Grave had... I don't know why it's not showing it all. In fact, while I was searching, I'd been rather surprised at the amount of pieces he has composed. I didn't expect to find many handwritten scores around here, but I was surprised to discover quite a lot. Many of them were written by other people, but a sizable chunk of them were his. Graves' methodical personality seemed to work out in our favor, as all handwritten scores had been carefully grouped together. It seemed unlikely to me that he would hide Lise's score in a completely different location. He had to think that with so many scores here, it would be okay to just place it somewhere among them. "Chris? Huh? What's up?" "Are you tired?" "No, I'm fine. What about you?" "I'm okay." "I see. We're about halfway there. Let's return to our work soon." "Okay, but you're not tired, right?" "That's right. Why do you ask?" "Want to do an ensemble? Just once is fine." "It would make for a nice change of pace." "There happens to be a foretell here anyway." "Okay, let's do it." We had plenty of time left. Yee, no harm in playing one song. Oh, I wouldn't do that. The foretell that had been set up in a corner of the room had collected a layer of dust, apparently having been out of use for a while. "Okay, let's go." "Okay." Lise began singing happily, inciting me to start playing along on the foretell. The lyrics were a bit down to earth, perhaps due to Lise having attached them afterward. They probably represented her feelings of solitude. But the lyrics wrote of hope in the end. I wondered if that had been her wish. I hope Lise's wish had come true right now. After one song, we returned to our work. In the process, something suddenly came to mind. "Come to think of it, you mentioned he had played that piece in here, right?" Yes, he played it on that foretell. In the case of that foretell wouldn't have been used a lot, as its content was permanently set up in the corner of the room. At least, it shouldn't have been. Yet there wasn't much dust to be discovered. There seemed to be about as much dust on the case as on the foretell, even though one would normally prioritize keeping the foretell clean. We'd better check this thing as well. I opened the case. Wait! A score written on ancient parchment lay bare inside the case. Giving it a glance over, I confirmed it was the piece we were looking for. "Lise, I found it!" "Huh? Really?" I rushed over to Lise's side and handed her the score. This is it! No doubt about it." Seemingly wanted to confirm even the feel of it, Lise rubbed her hand over the paper several times, then affectionately held it close to her chest. Thank goodness we could leave this place now. Yes, thank you very much for helping out. Don't mention it. Barely even listening to me, Lise had cast her gaze back to the score. I became curious myself and peered at the score over her shoulder. Did someone write this song for someone else? The title read simply, Esk, which seemed like a person's name to me. The true lyrics, huh? I began reading the lyrics scribbled on the score. Guys, get out of there! You can read it later! Is this a love song? Lise seemed to have come to the same conclusion as me, perhaps having also skimmed through the lyrics. So I suppose this was a love song by the composer, for the person whose name is in the title. I had no idea, but this might just be... Yeah. The fact that Lise had this in her possession hinted at something. Perhaps one of Lise's true parents wrote this piece, or was on the receiving end of it. There was also the possibility that both were true. The name of the composer is... I decided to check the name at the end of the score. I leafed through to the last page and read the name out loud. Grave... What? You can't be serious. Huh? What about my father? As she said that, Lise also checked the name of the composer. Grave Cesarini. It can't be. Looking closely, there was no mistaking it was Grave's handwriting, after all the scores of his I had gone through while searching. Since Lise was convinced this was her score, it wasn't possible for him to have rewritten it. Then, what did this mean? I thought I heard the sound of a foretell here. It appears I had some uninvited guests. Father! What are you doing here? Just searching for something. Don't get cocky. You sure show no compunction for your actions. I'm very sorry. There's no need for you to apologize. You only came to collect something that was rightfully yours in the first place. Grave's sudden entrance surprised me, to the point I almost panicked. But when I saw Lise shrink back in fear, I instantly regained my cool. When I thought of the things this man had done to her, my heart became overshadowed by rage. My mind was filled with doubts over how Grave could have been the one to compose that piece. But even so, I'd managed to gather the courage to engage the confrontation with him as I stood in front of Lise to cover for her. Don't be ridiculous. I wrote that piece. In fact, I wrote it for a certain individual. I understood what he was saying. The name of the composer was his. There was no doubt about that. But... LISE'S. Huh? Yes? I knew that you would come back to me. The reason I had left you alone this past week was because I believed you would return to me eventually. But... While I did have a hunch, it really was fortunate for me to return home early today. In a complete change of personality from just a moment ago, he was now almost affectionately speaking to Lise. Worry? This man wasn't capable of feeling such emotions for Lise. Everything he said was a lie. Lise, while you were gone, I finally came to my senses. I truly regret having been so rough on you all this time, LISE'S. Father... I originally did not want to have this talk until you were grown up, but I believe now is as good a time as any. What was this man suddenly playing the hypocrite going to tell us now? Let's go, Lise. But please wait, Chris. Let's hear him out. Chris Verton, you need to know this as well. In fact, it is your duty if you want to stay with LISE'S. After all the things this man had told me, he'd lost all of his credibility. But Lise was gripping the hem of my shirt, appealing me to stay. I stood still while still making sure that I could leave at any time, and decided to hear him out. Understood. Then, allow me to continue. I composed that piece for a woman named Esk. Esk is your mother's name, LISE'S. But that means... Indeed, I am your real father. I wasn't sure how to put this feeling of shock into words. If this was true, he had been doing all those terrible things to his own daughter. When I first saw you at that orphanage, I did not yet realize this. However, when I heard you hum that song, I was convinced that you were my real daughter. Then, what happened to my mother? At the time, I was at the height of my career. Unfortunately, due to my demanding occupation, I no longer had time to think of my family. Eventually, Esk took you and silently ran away from home. Graves sighed exaggeratedly, as though he was acting out the main part in a tragedy. It was so overly theatrical it made me sick. Father! I desperately searched all over for you and your mother, but I was unable to find you. Later, when I went around performing at orphanages as volunteer work, I found you, LISE'S. The very first thing I thought of was to take you in as my daughter. What about my mother? I was never able to find out Esk's whereabouts. She likely became unable to raise you on her own and ended up having no choice but to leave you in the orphanage's care. Father! Please, come back to me, LISE'S. Lise looked me in the eyes. She faltered, and seemed to attempt to say something a few times, but swallowed her words again every time. Normally, this would be the deeply emotional scene where I would be gladly handing over the girl with a smile on my face, but there was no way I could. I still didn't trust him one bit. If you really are her true father, why did you do those horrible things to her? It was discipline. If I wanted to raise her to become a first-rate foretellist, she had no time to waste on singing. The moment he said discipline, I had the feeling his eyes lit up in some kind of perverse enjoyment, but that might have been my imagination. Chris! Then why would you expose the truth only now? Why would you want to wait until she was grown up? I am a Cesarini. Nobility is nobility from birth, both in the good sense and the bad. I cannot escape my heritage. I cannot, by any means, escape the obligations attached to that name. I must send off a sublime foretellist of this family into society. I cannot afford emotions to get into the way of that. If I had told her I was her real father, I would become emotionally involved with her. As a result, I would no longer be able to apply strict discipline to her. That is why I decided to keep quiet about this until she had perfected the art, until she had fully grown up. Father! His story seemed to make sense at first, but then why had he told me the things he had earlier? Like how she had no need for feet, and how there was no need for him to hold back. I had trouble believing even a word of what he said. You do remember the things you told me before, don't you? Oh yes, I did in fact speak rather harshly of her, but it was all for LISE'S sake. But it was too harsh to bring this up in front of Lise. It was bad enough that Grave just admitted himself that he had said awful things about her. Chris, Lise seemed to have believed everything he had said. I wouldn't be surprised now if she told me she wanted to stay here after all. But if what Graves had said really was true, it would undeniably be in her best interest to stay here. I'm sorry. And Lise said what I'd been terrified of. However, it wasn't directed at me, it was directed at Grave. I have decided to stay with Chris. I wondered how much she had struggled to come to that decision. But without showing even the slightest indication of conflict, she responded in a distinct tone of voice. I see. Grave replied in a grim tone, then went silent. Lise, don't worry. I may have misunderstood my father's intentions before, but now I understand how he feels. However, I promised you I would stay with you, Chris, so... Truly, I have done many horrible things to you, LISE'S. If you do not want to come back, then I will not object. However, I thought he would deliver an additional blow, but then he added in a commendable fashion, I am still a Cesarini. I cannot approve of you two so readily. However, if you manage to impress me at tomorrow's graduation recital, I might consider it. Really? Chris Verton. Grave turned to me and continued, That is my condition, is that clear? Chris? Understood. Even if I didn't completely trust him, it wasn't a bad proposal. Grave was saying that as long as I was able to become a renowned musician in LISE'S place, there wouldn't be a problem. You should practice while you can. I duly hope you haven't been wasting your time this past week. I've been singing every day, all day long. Singing? Grave spat out. For a second, the calm demeanor he had until now vanished, and he almost instilled fear into me. However, Lise was so moved by his words that she didn't even notice. We shall take our leave then. Lise? Yes. Very well. I will be part of the jury tomorrow, and I will have you know that I will not be lenient with you. Well then, if you'll excuse us. Father, I will see you tomorrow. Yes, I will take charge of the score until then. I will hand it over to you after the performance. Yes, I will come back for it. Lise's voice was brimming with confidence. When we returned home, Lise immediately began preparing for practice. Chris, hurry up and set up your foretell. Got it. I had never seen Lise in such high spirits before. I couldn't bear to reveal my doubts about this wager. It was probably a first for her. She had finally found out about her roots, and she was on the point of being acknowledged by her father. No matter what Grave's true intentions were, the only thing I could do was to put up the ultimate performance tomorrow. Let's go at it from the start. Okay. I sat down behind my foretell, which I had prepared in a rush, and faced Lise. Oh boy. I gotta move my laptop just in case if I have to actually do this. After taking a deep breath, Lise nodded. Yep, here we go, we're doing it! Gosh, this is the first time we're doing this since, like, the beginning. I did a lot better than I thought I was going to do because I hadn't done this in a long time. We're gonna kill it. Who was right? After finishing the song, we paused to catch our breaths. There was no need to discuss the performance. We both knew exactly what went well and what didn't. Want to go for another round? No. We are good. Nah, this is probably enough for today. I didn't investigate what time we would perform, so we would have to be there first thing in the morning. Also, we need to get plenty of rest. That's true. I'd noticed it had become pretty late. With a goal in mind, it was much easier to concentrate than when we were playing for fun. Tomorrow would be a very important day for us. The later our performance had been scheduled, the longer we would be able to practice beforehand. To think that I used to believe that the bare minimum of practice was enough. I had changed a lot this past month or so, and so had Lise. And tomorrow, given what we'd managed to pull off a magnificent performance, I wondered if Lise would be able to change even more. I still couldn't trust Gray fully, but I was starting to feel thankful towards him for presenting us with this opportunity. Tomorrow's the day, huh? Yeah, it was a bit sudden, but we've been playing all week, so we should do fine. Yes! Lise looked at me with eyes shimmering with hope. I nodded back to her with renewed resolve for the day to come. Alright, here we go! Morning had arrived with a pleasant awakening. It was still before 8. I remembered that the concert started at 10. The plan was to arrive at school at 8:30, check when it would be our turn, then start practicing. Even if we assumed we were the first to perform, we would still have a full hour to practice. Are you ready? All set. A strong reply that overflowed with determination. There had been a time when I thought it would benefit Lise greatly if we had a great performance at graduation. However, even without that, she'd already been able to change. I couldn't deny that the conversation I had with Grave yesterday had a part in that. I wouldn't go as far as saying I was thankful to him, but perhaps one day I'd be able to forgive him. We're off! We're off! Lise turned toward the room she had been living in for the past week and mimicked my words. The implications were a bit different for her, but I was happy all the same. Then let's go. Okay. Right before I closed the door, I had the feeling I heard a familiar sound. The skies were still overcast, but it seemed brighter than usual to me. The rain was fine and fog-like. As a result, we barely even got wet. Today's rain was so weak, it would change direction with every gust of wind. Due to this wind, it was a little cold, but for this town's standards, it was a very pleasant day. We entered the hallway and immediately checked the bulletin board. We had been put up here on the 4th day of the year. Or it had been put up here for since the 4th day of the year, but I had barely come to school since the day I'd had that talk with Miss Cordell. And the few times I did, I'd been frantically searching for Lise, and didn't care enough to check it. Chris is... Oh, we're up first in the afternoon. Looks like it. That means we still have plenty of time to rehearse. The afternoon program began at 1:30. And it seemed we had to be present backstage at least 15 minutes before we were up. Then let's hurry to a practice room. Yeah. Lise didn't seem to have very good memories about the practice rooms, but today there weren't many students around. The ones that were had been mostly seniors. There was no one who knew her. But these kind of worries should soon be history. We would get everyone to acknowledge the qualities of her voice. I had faith we would. Today was probably the last time I would visit these practice rooms. I'd never been too diligent about practice, but strangely enough, that fact kinda held profound meaning to me. This is the first time I've come here with you, huh? Yes, I always used to practice in the old building. But you'll be able to come here more often from now on, won't you? Yes, I feel I have the confidence to come here by myself now. Good for you. Chris, you've always been thinking about doing things for my sake, haven't you? Huh? Like today, and when you first invited me to be your partner. I don't know about that. I could tell, don't worry. Anyway, let's start practicing. I prepared my foretell and we repeatedly rehearsed the piece. After a satisfactory amount of repetition, we entered the hall 10 minutes before our appointed time. This was because Lise wanted to have a good look at the place she would be performing at. I'm going to be singing here, huh? Yeah, I'm kinda nervous. I thought you would be accustomed to be on a stage like this. But it's my first time singing in front of people, Lise said with deep emotion as she gazed over the concert hall. Despite it being a lunch break, the hall was filled with people, and quite noisy. The graduation recital attracted a great number of visitors, who were all assigned reserved seats, so there were surprisingly few seats left for actual students. To prevent losing their seats, the students who came to listen to the recitals apparently didn't get up much. There were probably students among them who knew about Lise, but Lise herself didn't seem too concerned about them. Okay then, let's go, Lise said to me after having one last look at the stage. Okay, so before this, I'm gonna save. 'Cause this is like the part where it determines the good and the bad ending. By the time we arrived backstage, it was exactly 15 minutes before the start of our performance. We were informed by the students in charge that those up first after the break were to prepare behind the curtain on stage, so I proceeded to set up my foretell right away. The rustle of people on the other side of the curtain gradually grew louder, signaling to us the moment of truth was drawing near. I retrieved the score Lise had copied for me the other day from my bag, and flipped through the pages once for a last review. Some parts were significantly different from the original composed by Grave. I would have been able to correct it if we'd been able to take that score with us. Is something wrong? Nah, just thinking that there are probably a few parts a little different from the original, but I forgot to correct them. But we created this piece together, using my memories as reference. This version is much more suitable for today's performance. Yeah, you're right. It was just as she said. But if I had been able to change one thing, I would have wanted to change the lyrics of this piece we made together into something suitable for a love song. Even ignoring Grave's original intentions, it was appropriate to sing about love along with this piece. Miss Cordell and Forney had been right in thinking this was a love song all along. I'm getting really nervous. Was it like this when you played the foretell as well? No, when I played the foretell, I was hardly nervous at all. Not because I had so much confidence in myself, but rather because I was only playing for my father. Then what about right now? While it's true I'm singing for you now, I also feel I want to sing for myself. That might be why I'm so nervous right now. Lise hugged her own body as she talked. She seemed to be shivering a little. Lise, give me your hand. Huh? Okay. I firmly grasped the hand she timidly extended to me. It's true, your heart is racing. That's because of you, Lise said while restlessly looking around a few times, worried that people might be watching. Including the students in charge, there were relatively many students backstage. But everyone was so busy they didn't have time to concern themselves with us. As we stood there holding hands for a few minutes, Lise gradually regained her calm. Thank you. I've calmed down a bit now. Great. Lise slowly let go of my hand. I didn't want to let her go, but I had no choice. What was more, I sensed someone approaching us from behind. Is it Grave? No, it's Miss Cordell! Good morning. Looks like you managed to bring her along. Yes, we've had plenty of practice as well. Well, looks like you've been unusually diligent. Liesl, nice to see you again. Yes, good morning. At any rate, you look pretty confident. Yeah, I am. An awfully bold response. Interesting. So, do you think you can get him to acknowledge you? Miss Cordell's sharp observation caught me off guard. She did tell me once to get him to acknowledge us, and in reality, we had made a promise like that with Grave. I'm sure I can. I will make him acknowledge us. Chris. Good. Right then, the buzzer sounded. It's time. Good luck, you two. Alright, I'm gonna save it here. So that way we don't have to go through all that again. Thanks. Thank you. There was a mechanical sound of the curtain being raised. With scores in hand, we proceeded onto the stage. When viewed from the stage, the concert hall was dark, making it impossible to make out the faces of the audience. There had to be at least some acquaintances of Lise among the crowd. Lise looked around the stage nervously, then took a deep breath. I sat down behind my foretell and locked eyes with her. Everything we had gone through up until now flashed through my mind. A lot of things had happened before coming here. Hardships, things that had hurt Lise. Even so, we had made it onto the stage, and were about to perform the ensemble that would decide our future. Although my goals were grand, I decided to focus on my most basic of objectives, to make this an enjoyable performance for us. Taking care not to move my mouth too much, I whispered to Lise, Lise, have fun singing. I will. After another deep breath, we started our performance. All right, here we go. This is it. Oh, shoot. We were met with thunderous applause from the audience. Lise stared at the scene before her in awe. While I was equally awestruck, I had at least expected it to a certain extent, so it didn't compare to what Lise was going through. It was proof that her singing had managed to profoundly move people. Just looking at the amount of people continuing their applause, I had no doubt in my mind about that. Lise, I motioned for her to bow. Yes. We bowed deeply to the audience, then returned backstage. Good job. Coming from her, those were the ultimate words of praise. I was genuinely happy to hear them, but I had something more important on my mind. By the way, a message from Mr. Grave. Come to the lecture room at once. He told me to tell you this after you finished. Miss Cordell said with a smile. She probably had a good idea what was going on. Then we'll be going right away. All right, before you go, one more message. From Tortanita. She seemed concerned about you, but left right after you finished your performance. So, what's the message? You did a good job. Just that. I see. Now, off you go. Understood. Lise? Yes, let's go. We were both full of confidence. Anyone would have to approve of a performance like that. With the applause still going strong, we left for our destination. Oh man, I remember that feeling. When we entered the room, Grave was looking quite displeased. Or so I thought, but it vanished in a flash, making me wonder if I had seen it correctly in the first place. Lise, who had entered behind me, didn't notice anything. Perhaps it was just the poor impression of him I had in my mind that had made me think so. Good of you to come. Yes. Father, did you see our performance? Avoiding all needless formalities, Lise went right to the point. I was already sure of the outcome, but it still made me nervous. Yes, indeed I did. So, what did you think, Father? I have no choice but to give my approval, he said reluctantly, although in Lise's eyes he was probably projected as saying it affectionately. To her once so stubborn father must have looked about to break down in tears. Of course, I would be lying if I said it didn't look like this to me as well. But I could feel some definite coldness in his tone of voice. Then is it okay? Yes. Thank you very much! Chris Verton. Yes? Take good care of Liesl. Huh? Lise didn't notice a thing. She was in euphoria. You may come to collect the score at home. Let's go, Liesl. Yes. Wait a second. Don't worry, I'll be right back. No, that's not what I meant. Grave had already left the lecture room. What the heck was that just now? Lise ran up to me and pecked me on the cheek. See you later. I'll be coming straight to your room, so wait for me, okay? Okay. I lost count of how many times I had wanted to grab hold of Lise's arm as she ran away from me. I didn't manage to bring myself to do it in the end, and could only watch as she disappeared from my sight. An indescribable sense of uneasiness invaded my mind. The sight of Grave's sneer at the end of his talk was burned into my retina. Believing in Lise's words, I had been waiting. I still felt anxious about the whole ordeal. I wondered how long I'd been waiting like this. I was snapped back into reality by a weak knock on the door. Lise! I immediately knew that knock belonged to Lise. As I rushed to open the door, the girl, who had been slumped against it, slowly collapsed onto the floor. Uh-oh, what happened? Oh no! Lise? I quickly took the girl in my arms and checked her condition. This is... A dry, hoarse sound spilled forth from Lise's throat. An additional bruise had been etched onto her neck. Why? Why? Because I felt like it. What else is there to say? Grave! It was the first time I called him by his name, and I put as much venom into my voice as I could muster. Don't make such a fuss. It will bother the neighbors. What did you do to her? I could barely manage a weak murmur now. The rage that had flared up within me had cooled as quickly as it had come, or as it came the moment I felt Lise shivering in my lap. You have tried to take away what was most precious to me. It is only logical for me to take away what is most precious to Liesl in return. Cut the bullshit. You are as rude a fellow as ever, but I will let it slide for today. At any rate, be sure to take good care of Liesl. Shut the hell up! Everything you told us was a lie, wasn't it? It was the truth. Well, half of it anyway. Grave snickered bemusedly. Liesl mother abandoned us. She got another man. Grave continued. She left me for some lousy singer. Since I did not want a child of that woman, I sent her to an orphanage. However, several years later, it had come to my attention that she had developed the ability to play the fortel. Since half of it was still my blood, I decided to raise her to be a fortellist, but she was still a child of that woman. She let herself be swayed by a worthless man and took up singing. Shut up. You know I loved Liesl from the bottom of my heart, I truly did, but Liesl betrayed me, despite knowing I was her real father. She was genuinely happy about it, and yet you are free to do with her what you want. I will disown her shortly. The child of that woman has no longer anything to do with me. Shut up. Just get the hell out of here. You should give up the way of music. It is an unattainable dream for you. You had talent, but you are just too stupid. I said shut the hell up. I wanted to get up and punch him in the face, but I couldn't let go of Lise. I had to take her to a hospital as soon as Grave was gone. Well then, take good care of my daughter. She won't be able to sing ever again, though. Oh, screw you. Lise. Hey, Lise? I tore my eyes off her unnaturally indented throat and spoke to her. I could hear a car speed off in the distance. She showed no signs of regaining consciousness. I took the girl in my arms and walked outside. I'm coming in, Lise. I called out before entering, but I knew Lise could not answer. She had initially been admitted to the hospital in Piova, but then her condition destabilized, and she was transferred to the hospital in my hometown. I opened a window to let fresh air inside. A fresh breeze made its way into the room, driving out the stale air. It was a corner room on the second floor, so it was always basked in sunlight. Lise, how are you today? The weather's great today. The sunlight feels so nice. Lise made a few soft groans, never looking me in the eye. Well, she would react if I spoke to her. She did not comprehend who I was. Even so, it was important to keep talking to her, or so the doctor had said. I came to visit her every day and always played the fortel for her. Every single day I would be by the girl's side until visiting hours were over. Lise had no place to call home anymore. The only place she had left was here by my side. And the only place I wanted to be was by Lise's side. Lise. I was absorbed in playing the fortel when I heard someone knock on the door behind me. Who could it be? The doctor didn't normally come in at a time like this, and I had taken up all nursing responsibilities myself. I'm coming in. I had stopped playing, but didn't open the door. I'd figured it was some misunderstanding, but... I heard something terrible had happened, so I came to visit. Torta? How is she? Sit down, it's a long story. Okay. Torta took a folding chair from the corner of the room and sat down right next to me. I felt slightly uneasy, as there hadn't ever been any visitors besides me. Where should I start? The day of the graduation recital, or when I met Lise? Your performance was great. Really? Thanks. We didn't seem to be on the same wavelength, but I continued anyway. If I begin from the start, it's going to be a pretty long story. If you're willing to tell me, please do. Right. It was when I began searching for a partner. Having grown tired of searching, I suddenly heard a beautiful voice in the old school building. Still seated behind the foretell, I cast my gaze out the window. I told Torta the entire story. The things going through my mind at the time, the way I'd felt about things. The story went on, and before I realized, I had been talking for over an hour. In the process, I had become worried that Lise might start feeling uncomfortable if she didn't hear the sound of my foretell for all that time. But I wanted to share the story with someone, so I kept on talking. When I finally finished, I had come to realize the tears flowing down my face. Huh? Chris, it must have been rough for you. Yeah. All the painful and sad memories suddenly came back to me at once. I'm sorry, I can't talk right now. It's okay. Want to get some fresh air? No, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. Still crying, I looked over at Lise. The girl reacted to my voice by slightly tilting her head in my direction. Chris. And that was the first time since then that she had called out my name. My foretell was set up close to the bed and in order for Lise to hear it more clearly, so she was always at an arm's length away from me. Lise's thin hand slipped out from under the sheets, and she slowly extended it toward me. Lise! Our hands locked, and I felt that everything had finally paid off. It didn't matter if she couldn't sing. I was just happy to have her by my side. I couldn't stop my eyes from flooding with tears. Lise looked at me with curious eyes and had a slightly solemn expression on her face. It's okay. It's okay. The warm sensation of her palm gave me strength. Everything would work out. For Lise and for me. From now on, I would no longer cry. I would come here and play the foretell for her, for the rest of my life if need be. I suppose I should go. Sure. Sorry for acting like this in front of you. No, it's okay. I can't see you off, so see you later. Yeah, but can I ask you one last thing? What is it? Is this your idea of atonement? What? Nothing. Please forget about it. Torta. See ya! With that, Torta left. The two of us silently watched her leave. Oh well. Hey, Lise. Don't worry. I will play the foretell for you again. And so the tones of my foretell filled up the room once more. God! Lise's story was so messed up. I'm actually crying. Oh my god. Alright, let's see if anything is after. Yep, of course. The weather's beautiful again today. As usual, I opened up the window to let fresh air into the room. Even while I worked, I still came to visit her every day. I could only be with her all day on days off like these, but it was by no means an inconvenience for me to at least show my face every day. Lately, Lise had been starting to look quite delighted whenever I visited. all the more when I would play my foretell. It had been about a year since then. Spring came, summer passed, autumn ended, and it was winter again. Lise's condition hadn't changed, but there was one thing that had. The nameplate outside the room changed from Liesl from just Liesl to Liesl Verton. Since she still had no volition of her own, it was not yet official. So this was just me being selfish. I needed some emotional closure. But then I couldn't imagine Lise would be opposed to it. We would have to have a ceremony someday after she got discharged. But that was still far away. With such happy prospects in mind, I went to sit down behind my foretell. I continued playing the lyricless piece. Words of love were embedded into my notes. This piece was a love song after all. Lise. Grave once told me to give up on music, but here I was, living together with it. Music wasn't just about making grand performances in front of huge crowds. Just being able to perform for your loved ones, for those dear to you, was a beautiful thing. Suddenly... Huh? And tomorrow was full of hope. My eyes won't stop watering! No! Oh, this was so good. It was very messed up. Her story, like her backstory, is so messed up. But it was so good as an ending. Holy crap. Ugh. I loved it. I loved her good ending so much. Now I'm afraid of her bad ending. No. Oh no. And the whole like abuse thing from Grave at the end, like, oh my god, that was like legitimate anger. I was so angry. But yeah. Next time we'll get into her bad ending, which is we just have to fail the final piece at the end. So yeah. I hope that you liked it. If you did, hit that like button down below and don't forget to subscribe. I love you guys so much and I will see you next time.